let's talk about age gap romances. So this is a new series here on my channel that I'm calling 50 Shades of Smut, where I deep dive into different subgenres in the smut category. I love erotica here on my channel. You will see a ton of videos about it, a ton of different recommendations, but I kind of tend to stick to the same subgenre over and over again. The amount of bully romances I have read is a little bit intense at this point. So I really want to dip my toe into some other subgenres and see what I like. Now in this episode, I'm going to deep dive into some age gap romances. Now the first book that I chose is kind of the perennial favorite here on BookTube, and that is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I feel like whenever I hear about age gap romance, this is the book that people are talking about. Everyone seems to love this. People love Penelope Douglas's writing in general, but I feel like this is the one that tends to be people's favorite. I've tried a lot of Penelope Douglas's books with kind of hit or miss results. I absolutely hated Punk 57, but I enjoyed Bully, Corrupt, and Credence enough to be okay with her work, but I don't necessarily love it. I believe that this book is about a character who falls in love with her boyfriend's father. I think they all live together for one reason or another. I'm gonna assume she has a shitty home life or something, and she ends up having some sort of sexual tension with her boyfriend's dad. I believe her boyfriend also treats her like shit, so that might have something to do with it. The second book on this list is Dreams of 18 by Saffron A. Kent. I've read from Saffron A. Kent before. I've read two different books by her with kind of different results once again. I absolutely loved The Unrequited, but Medicine Man didn't really do it for me. This is actually loosely connected to Medicine Man because it's about a different character from that book. So this book is about a girl who, on her 18th birthday, threw herself at one of her neighbors, I guess, who is much, much older than her. She ends up being crowned the town slut, and he ends up running away to live in isolation in the wilderness, I guess to avoid the huge scandal that ensued. I have high hopes for this because I really enjoy Saffron A. Kent's writing, and I feel like this is a situation that could be ripe for personal exploration, which is what she did so well in The Unrequited. The next book is On the Island by Tracee Garvis Graves. This is the one book in this collection that has an older woman in it instead of an older man. This is about a 30-year-old English teacher who ends up stuck on a deserted island with her 16-year-old student who has cancer. Essentially their plane crash lands and that's how they get stuck together on this island, and feelings ensue, I guess. I'm unsure how to feel about this one, but we'll see what happens. The next one I have here is Hush Hush by Lucia Franco. She seems to be a very prolific author of this age gap category. I know that she has another book called Balance that people find very controversial. I debated reading that one, but this one just called my name more. This is about a girl who is an escort. I just think it would be great to read a book that has a positive outlook on that sort of profession for once. Because so often we see it shit upon, or we see it in a non-consensual light, which obviously paints it as gross and dirty because non-consensually it is gross. So I believe that this follows a girl who ends up having feelings for her much, much older client. I'm very, very interested in that one because it has a really good rating on Goodreads, and like I said, the sex work industry interests me when it's written about in a positive way. And the last one on this list is very much a wild card because I had never heard about it before until I went looking for books for this video, and that is Forbidden by Seven Rue. It says that this book is banned on Amazon, which, how dirty does this book have to be to get banned on Amazon? I have read some pretty taboo shit that has been readily available on Amazon, so I have to wonder just what quite was done in this book to get it banned. That might be why I ended up picking it. This is about a girl who ends up in some sort of sexual relationship with her dad, her uncle, and her dad's best friend. Now they aren't actually blood related to her. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the situation is, but I'm intrigued to find out. Maybe. We'll see how this one goes. I don't love anything that is even mildly incestuous. It just makes me so fucking uncomfortable. I've read books before that have included things with like stepbrothers or whatever, but like they use the word brother a lot and it's very clear that they're trying to toe that line. But whatever, I'm pushing my boundaries, we're doing it, it's gonna be fun? Question mark? I'm excited to see what these books have in store for me, so let's get this started. So I read 50 pages of On the Island by Tracee Garvis, and it's enough to get a good first impression of the book. It started off with a bang, like it really just threw them on this island immediately. And so far I'm finding that the writing is very to the point. It's very simple. It's very emotionless. It's focusing completely on the physical aspects, which, considering it's a survival story, that kind of makes sense. I do wish there was some more emotional exploration happening, because it just seems like I don't know how either of these characters are feeling, and considering they just crash landed on an island and are stranded there, I feel like they should have some emotions about it. They also aren't really communicating at all or talking to each other at all, considering they do not know each other. You'd think that they would at least try to get to know each other pretty quickly on, and they're not. I don't understand how we're going to get to like a place where they're hooking up, considering they haven't even really said 2 words to each other. But I also feel like these characters are extremely lazy and haven't done much in way of their survival, or at least as much as I would expect. Honestly, a lot of their survival so far has been based around the fact that things are washing up on shore and just basically like falling into their lap, because otherwise they would have been dead by now. I don't have many thoughts about the 2 characters. They're pretty bland so far. I'll probably update again when I'm about halfway through. So I'm now halfway through On the Island, and I like it, but I have a lot of nitpicky feelings about it. The love interest in this book is 15, I believe, when the book starts, or maybe 16, and she's 30. Then they get stranded on this island, and I was unsure about how I felt about them hooking up, because that's just really young. But I understand they're on an island. Maybe they think they're gonna get stuck here forever, whatever. I just assumed that they were gonna be on this island for a couple months, and I couldn't see how their relationship would progress that quickly. But it turns out I was wrong. I am now 150 pages into this, and they've been on the island for 2 years, and they still haven't slept together. I'm glad that they didn't sleep together while he's underage, because it makes me feel more comfortable to know that they will not be sleeping together until he's an adult. Because they haven't had any sort of emotional or physical relationship yet, it's just been a lot of stuff focusing on their survival. As I mentioned before, things just keep falling into their lap, like, for instance, shampoo and toothpaste. She mentions how she packed 2 bottles of shampoo, and between the 2 of them they have 3 tubes of toothpaste. Well, it's been 2 years and somehow they're still using that same shampoo. I know that's a nitpicky detail, but these are the things that I have to focus on since there is no sex scenes. Also, for the love of God, you're on an island. Find a way to shave your head so that the shampoo can be used as soap, you know? Also, they have 4 bars of soap that they've also been using for over 2 years now. I'm just... How? So I finished On the Island, and this is getting 2 stars. On a steaminess scale, it's getting a 0, because there were 0 sex scenes, and boy could this book have used some. If the romance was good, or if the writing or the book, if anything was exceptional, then I don't need sex scenes to like some sort of romance book. But this book ended up being so bland. It was hard to tell at first because, like I said, like nothing happened emotionally or sexually or anything like that up until the halfway point. So the last I talked to you, it was just all survival. And that stuff was interesting enough. But like once the emotional stuff started and they started hooking up and getting together, I just expected a little more. I especially expected a little more emotional investment. Whereas it ended up just being so bland and so basic. And there is no emotional depth to their relationship. Like, I know for a fact that I'm not going to remember this book a couple weeks from now. There was just nothing memorable about it. Also, in terms of this being an age gap romance, I kind of feel like that didn't end up mattering until the very end when they needed a conflict, and then they were like, oh, well, we want different things in life because we're at different stages in our adult lives. It just, none of this was interesting in the end, other than the survival stuff that it started off with. But that kind of tapered off after they started hooking up, and so did my enjoyment of the book. Okay, so hopefully this is fine. Hi, baby. Want to come join me? So I started Hush Hush by Lucia Franco. And, okay, you're quite in the way. Honey, get over here. And I was really looking forward to this book for 2 reasons. Yes, Mom. What are you doing? I was really looking forward to this book for 2 reasons. One is that I've heard a lot about Lucia Franco, but I've never read anything from her before. But I've heard that she is, like, not afraid to toe the line of taboo, and I love taboo, so I was into that. And then the second reason was that this book is about a sex worker, and I just feel like there's still so much even with the rise of OnlyFans, I still feel like there's so much stigma around being a sex worker. And I love the idea of reading a book from a sex worker's perspective so that hopefully we can get a positive view on it and have less of the judgment. I'm 25% in, and a judgment-free zone is definitely not what I got from this book. The amount of judgy bullshit that goes through this main character's head in regards to sex work is just kind of ridiculous, and it just feels so dated, despite the fact that this is a pretty new novel. The main character isn't a sex worker when we start the book. Her roommate is, and she's the one who kind of talks her into it. And so far I've spent the first 25% wishing that this book was from the friend's point of view, because she just seems endlessly cooler than our main character. The writing is not good, but it's not so terrible that I can't get past it. There's a lot of cliche that I'm just not super into that makes me roll my eyes kind of constantly. There's been 2 sex scenes. The first sex scene was awful, like just truly not sexy at all and just really uncomfortable. But the second scene was great. So I'm hoping that the first one was just because like she was drunk and it was a hookup, and maybe it was supposed to be awkward and uncomfortable. Also, I'm 25% of the way in, and I don't even know if we've been introduced to the love interest yet. She did have like this flirty encounter with a guy, and oftentimes that guy would end up being the love interest, but because I know this is an age gap, I don't remember thinking he was super old, so I kind of don't think we've met the love interest yet, which is interesting. I'm about halfway through Hush Hush by Lucia Franco, and I really have a love-hate relationship with this book. I pretty much hate the main character. I'm hoping that maybe she goes through a character arc and by the end she realizes that she shouldn't be ashamed of what she's doing. But I have a feeling that that is not where this is going, and I'm really, really worried that the arc is just going to be like, oh my god, look how love saved me from a life of sex work. I really hope that's not the case, but I'm just getting that vibe. At this point in the book, she has 2 separate love interests, and even though it's very obvious like what one is the one she's going to end up with, but I'm actually really enjoying the storyline with the second love interest, because he's very clearly supposed to be put up as this good guy, but you can also see that he's kind of a judgmental prick. And I always love it when we're trying to dismantle like that good guy archetype, and I feel like the author is doing that well. Hopefully she sticks to the landing with that. The other love interest, the one that has the age gap that we're supposed to be interested in, I actually don't really give a crap about him at all. I will say there was something that happened with him that I feel like the author did a good job with, and I did actually find it surprising. In terms of him as a character, I just find every time he opens his mouth, I have a hard time taking him seriously. But the sex scenes in this book are pretty good. There are 2, at least, that I've really, really liked. And I kind of wasn't expecting that, considering the writing is failing me in a lot of other areas, but she does write a good sex scene. So I'm attempting to make bread. I attempted this yesterday, and it did not go well. Apparently, the dough hook can come off, and I essentially just ended up cooking flour. So we'll see how it goes today. This isn't plugged in, is it? I finally got access access to the rest of my script audiobooks, so I was able to finish the audiobook for Hush Hush pretty quickly, and I hated it. Every single character in this book fucking sucked. Like, they were all such shitty people. Like I said, I went into this thinking it was going to be very pro sex worker, because the main character is a sex worker, her best friend's a sex worker, so clearly they have to be okay with it. But no, they just shit on it the entire time and like talk about like how she feels like a hoe and like then she like puts down anyone who's like working on the corner or whatever. Like, she'll talk about how like, oh, she's not like them because she makes so much money and, you know, she gets to go to fancy places and whatever. Like, she's not some $20 hooker. And I'm just like, oh my god, like how I hated all of it. So that was terrible. And then the main love interest, he's fine. He doesn't do it for me personally because he's very suave. He says all the right things and he's very upfront about like his dirty talk, but like most of his dirty talk isn't really dirty. It's more just like romantic mumblings, and I hate it. Like, none of that does anything for me. I feel uncomfortable and like I tend to roll my eyes a lot because it's just, it comes off so slimy to me. So that wasn't really working for me either, but he was fine. Like, I didn't hate him because at least he seemed like a decent human being. Until they finally have this like huge blowout fight. Then he turned into a gigantic asshole and just started calling her a whore, and I was like, okay, great, so you suck too. And then there's this other guy who clearly wasn't meant to be an actual love interest. He was just supposed to be like another obstacle for the main couple. So this other guy, you knew he was gonna turn into like a douchebag once he found out that she was a sex worker, and when he found out, sure enough, he did. But like, honestly, he didn't say anything that was worse than what the actual love interest was saying. They were both just calling her a slut the entire time. So like we're clearly supposed to hate dude number 2, but he's the same as the love interest. I don't understand. Not to mention there was some other emotional manipulation shit going on. She was also a terrible best friend. There were so many things in this book I hated. I can't. I gave it 1.5 stars because honestly, like, the actual writing, like the actual sentences were fine. It's just the book overall was trash. It's such a relief to finally be reading something I enjoy. This is the third book I've read by Saffron Kent. What I will say is that if you've read something from her in the past, you will know what to expect, because I have realized that all 3 of her books kind of run along the same lines. They use the same tropes. There's very much like the girl who's like newly 18 and she's kind of quirky, kind of weird, kind of a loner. And then there's this guy who's kind of gruff and quiet and also a loner who's much, much older than her. And it's taboo, there's some reason why they can't be together, etc. I absolutely loved The Unrequited, which was the first book I ever read by Saffron Kent. Medicine Man didn't quite work as well for me. This one is falling somewhere in the middle. I'm not loving it as much as The Unrequited, but I like it more than Medicine Man. Basically, this revolves around our main character who, when she turns 18, she decides to kiss the man who's living next door. The man who's living next door, unfortunately, is the like head basketball coach at her school, and he is much older than her. He's actually the father to her very best friend. Her best friend and her sister end up catching her with his father kissing in the backyard, and anyways, this all gets around town. It ruins his career, even though like she's 18 and she's the one who kissed him. He finds her drunk in his backyard and he's just trying to get her back to her house. And what I really appreciate about this book is the way Saffron Kent has actually made a situation in which no one was really in the wrong. And like, it's really just like a split-second happenstance that screws him over when he didn't actually really do anything. And it's another situation where like the people in the town aren't wrong either, because obviously a teacher shouldn't be kissing a student, 18 or not. I'm about 40% into this. It's pretty slow burn. Like, I'm assuming that they are going to get together at some point, but they haven't yet. Essentially, the book takes off where she's decided to track him down and apologize for ruining his life, because she ended up having an emotional breakdown and ended up going to this like mental health facility. So now that she's out, she wants to like make her amends and get her life back together. And now she's like trying to help him fix up his house because like he's really let his entire life go. So far, I'm enjoying that he's just kind of like gruff and wants her out of his life, but he's not like an out-and-out asshole. Like, you understand where he's coming from, And you understand where she's coming from too, because she knows she fucked up his life. So I'm enjoying it so far.
Figured I'd catch you up while I do my makeup. I pulled out my makeup last night and set it aside for this morning, thinking that I was going to do a whole look. But then I woke up at 1 a.m. and now I'm dead tired, so. Was anyone else emotionally scarred by Final Destination? Because I have so many irrational fears because of those movies. And last night I woke up gasping for air because I was having a nightmare that I was drowning in a car submerged underwater. That's not even a scene where characters die. So you can imagine how bad the other fears are. For me, it was always the tanning bed scene. Look, I know that like 15 things had to go wrong before the thing actually happened, and so it would never happen in real life, but I don't care. When she falls through the glass, I hate it. Oh, and the nail gun scene. Dear God. Yeah, so that's what I've been thinking about since I woke up. So I got farther in Dreams of 18. Before I was at 40%, now I'm at 65, and so the characters are officially hooking up. I will say this is the first book where I feel like the age play factor has actually mattered. I feel like in the first 2 books I read, like, yeah, there wasn't a huge age gap, but I don't know, it just didn't really come into play that much. Whereas in this book, like, the entire thing is about their age gap, and like it's the entire story. It affects the entire story. They've definitely done some things that I don't love. I knew it was coming. I just knew it. One of the things I appreciated was just like how much, you know, she kind of fucked up his life by going after this older man who like wasn't interested in her. But of course, you find out later in the book that he actually was interested in her the entire time. And I was just like, ugh, don't love that. Because he is obviously much older than her. She was 16 when she first like noticed him, and you find out that he also noticed her at that exact same time, which I was like, gross. But what I will say is I think the book does a good job of kind of talking about how horrible he felt because of that, and how he hated himself because of it. And like she comes to this cabin where he's at to apologize to him, and she says like, I ruined your life. I made everyone hate you and call you a pedophile, and it's all my fault. And now you're hiding away in this cabin because of me. And he kind of like says, no, I'm not. I'm hiding away because everything they said about me was right, and because I hate myself and I can't be trusted. And so like he knows his feelings for her were wrong. I feel like they handled it as best as they could and still make him at least somewhat likable. I do feel like how they got from like point A to point B, like from the beginning of the story and their interactions to them actually hooking up, didn't fully work. It felt a bit clunky. It felt like it literally happened in like a paragraph where like their feelings, his feelings for her changed or something, or his interactions and thoughts about her changed. And I was like, okay, that was abrupt. But now that they're hooking up, I'm into it. I feel like he's definitely the type of character I like. I love the way he like talks to her. He's very like possessive, but like only in their sex life, like not in their actual real life relationship. Like he's just possessive in bed, and I appreciate that.
I would like to never hear the word gush in erotica ever again. Please and thank you. Why?
So of course 3/4 of the way through they had to make up some sort of obstacle in the relationship so that they could break up for a short period of time and get back together, which, you know, the third act breakup or whatever that happens in every single romance. I'm not a fan of it. I'm thankful that it was more emotionally driven and more character focused obstacle than it was, you know, some dramatic element. So I am glad that this was a little more low-key. It still felt stupid. Especially because, like, even the character who initiated it realized how stupid it was pretty much immediately. I'm almost done the book, and I would probably give this, like, 3.5 stars. I do think the age gap thing works in this book pretty well. Even though she's 18 when they start hooking up, she still, like, does certain things that are very childlike. Like, she has an obsession with lollipops. And of course, he's, like, a foot taller than her, so, like, she steps on his shoes to, like, kiss him and stuff. So there's definitely an age play dynamic here. It's still not my thing, but I'm not disgusted by it either, so I consider that a win. I basically just have the epilogue left, so I don't think I'm going to update after this because I can't imagine it'll be that interesting, and I think I'm settling on a 3.5 stars. If you are into age gap romances, I definitely think this is one that you would probably enjoy.
The one thing I didn't mention previously is that she does a really good job of tackling mental health issues. It's something that's pretty consistent throughout all 3 books that I've read from her, and I do appreciate that it's not just there as some, like, quirk for the hero to fix in the end. That's something I see a lot of, and she never does that. You know, at the end of the day, the character still has the mental health issues that she's dealing with. She just happens to have someone she loves there to support her by her side. But he's not her savior, he doesn't cure her or anything like that. So that's definitely something I appreciated. After finishing that book, I decided to start Forbidden by Seven Rue. I have a lot to say about this, and I'm not really sure how to best sum up my feelings. This is actually really short. I did not realize that. This is more of a novella. Now, it's very fucking clear to me that the author wanted this to be an incest romance. She decided not to cross that line in order, I'm guessing, to sell this on Amazon. It got banned from Amazon anyway for including an underage character, I guess. I try not to judge others and their kinks if it's in fictional form, because, I mean, first of all, it's fake and no one's actually getting hurt by it, but also because a lot of times kinks can come from different forms of trauma, and that's people's way of dealing with it. But that does not mean that I'm comfortable with reading it myself. The main character is 17. Her love interests are her father figure, who isn't blood related to her but has been raising her since birth like a father, her uncle, who's obviously once again not related to her, and then her father's friend. And so, like, there's a huge age gap between all of these, and it's very clear that she's just trying to toe the line because all of Seven Rue's other books seem to be actual incest, so it's clear that this is just what she wants to write. Now, the plus side is that so far I'm not that uncomfortable. Unfortunately, the reason I'm not that uncomfortable is because this is horribly written. Like, this is not good. This isn't a book. This is just straight up porn. Often when people who don't read smut or erotica, when they come in and read erotica, everyone's like, oh, this is just porn. And I feel like that's simply not the case, and I kind of think it does a disservice to most erotica because there's lots out there that are really well written, that have fleshed out characters and plot. With this book, like, no, this is just porn. Like, there is no character development there whatsoever. These are not characters. This is like if you decided to turn on the Skinamax channel at like 11 p.m. and, you know, you didn't want to fuck up your computer with malware, so you're not going to look for porn there, you're just going to turn on whatever's on the TV. You walk into whatever movie is on, and it just happens to be like, My Daddy Bangs the Stepdaughter Part 3. This is that, but in book form. Like, as I started reading, I was like, oh, I've seen this movie before. So I don't feel uncomfortable because none of these people feel like characters. None of these people even feel like they fucking know each other. But I know that the last book on my list to read is Penelope Douglas, so at least I have that to look forward to, and that is going to push me through this novella. Alright, so it has been about a month since I've even thought about touching this reading vlog, and I need to force myself to get back into it. You know, I think the problem might have something to do with the fact that I'm reading a book about incest that I do not want to be reading. But it's only 60 pages long, and I am determined to read it. So I figured, you know what? Misery loves company. So I'm going to try and read this entire book tonight, and I figured, why not bring you along for the ride? I suppose I should just jump on into it. No time like the present, right? You know, I've heard a lot of different euphemisms for dicks in my time reading erotica, but I gotta say one of the most unsexy has gotta be glands. If you'd like to hear the usage. She breathed, then lowered her head and licked the drop of pre-cum off my glands. Not hot. Glands are not hot. But I will say, I found a new sexual situation that I find hilarious, so that's kind of fun. He asked her to open her mouth and stick out her tongue. Then it says, I leaned in, licking her tongue and then sucking on it to wet her mouth even more. Just picturing her sticking out her tongue and him sucking on her tongue, it's very weird. Oh, I forgot, he also spit in her mouth, so there's that. A third man has entered the picture, and he very clearly is not okay with her flirting with him or touching him in any way, and yet that makes her even more excited. Because apparently sexual harassment just adds flavor to the relationship, you know? I really wish they would stop mentioning the daddy dollar thing. I understand that this is clearly for people into that kink, but god damn it, I am so uncomfortable. Well, I finished Birdie, and there's not a lot to say about it. It's honestly just porn. It's just 60 pages of porn. She wasn't so much a character as just a libido on legs. I feel like my brain just like wanted to scream the entire time and never stop, so it was a fun experience. Kind of. Is fun the right word? Also, I rewarded myself with a Rockstar energy drink popsicle, which is my greatest idea yet. There is a lovely paragraph that the book ended with that I feel like I should share with you all. Birdie was our girl, and if there's ever going to be people finding out about our story, this is what I'd say to them. A girl who is mature enough to explore her sexuality should not be judged. And the men who get sucked into her bond are not rapists. They aren't abusers. They're simply in love with a beautiful soul. So, feminism? Yeah, the book was awful, and I'm giving it 1 star. I have somehow now read 2 books involving incest, and that is 2 books too many. I got 1 chapter into Birthday Girl, which obviously isn't very far, but so far what I will say is having like the first meeting between the main character and like the supposed love interest, the age gap, much older man, it was not great. Like I feel like the first meeting between a main character and the love interest should be very strong. You should really see that like chemistry, and I just thought it was really awkward. They meet at this movie theater and they start talking about different film things, and it's just uncomfortable. Like I did not get the chemistry at all, so we'll see how that goes. I'm assuming it will get better. I really, really hope so. So, Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I'm 17% into it, and I'm getting pissed. I really like the main character so far. And weirdly enough, I like her relationship with her boyfriend. I feel like, yes, Penelope Douglas is like dropping hints that he's not the greatest boyfriend, but so far it's just that like he doesn't have a job, which is not that big of a deal to me. Especially like if that's the main factor you're telling me why the dad is so hot is because like he works and the boyfriend doesn't, like that doesn't mean anything to me. I like that Penelope Douglas has hinted at a backstory between the main character and her boyfriend to kind of hint as to like why they're still together, because clearly they went through something traumatic together, and like the little flirty bits they've showed between them I really like. So I kind of feel like I'm starting off in a place with this book that I enjoy. because I understand why the main character is still with her ex-boyfriend, even if he's not the best. And I feel like that's what the book is setting out to do, as you slowly watch her start to fall for the dad. The problem is that I hate the dad. Every once in a while, he'll start to think about the main character and be like, oh, I don't want her working at that bar. I don't want her dressing the way she does and flirting with men to get tips. And then he'll start thinking about how, like, he can't tell her what to do. And I'm like, yes, exactly. But then he finishes the thought with, because she's not my girlfriend. And I'm like, no, you almost had it. He'll just continuously think about how, oh, she's his son's girl. So, like, his son is the one who gets to tell her what to do, not him. I hate it. I hate him so much. And the thing is, too, they're kind of painting him like, oh, he's just, like, old school. He has old traditional values or something. But he's 38. Like, he's not that old. If he was 60, I'd be like, all right, he's got these old school ways. But 38? No. No. I'm hoping that Penelope Douglas is setting us up for an arc where he respects her and her autonomy and who she is as a person. I almost feel like I'm supposed to think that this is sexy, that he thinks these things, and I don't. If this was a bully romance, totally, fine. He could be an absolute asshole, and I would have no problems with it, because the book would be aware of that, and we're aware of that as a reader. Whereas in this book, I feel like he's supposed to be some romantic hero. Like, he's not being painted out to be a bad guy. I really hope my reading experience goes up from here. If I was reading this for my own enjoyment, I would DNF her right now. The things that are annoying me right now mostly is the main character and the dad's relationship, which obviously is the entire book. She's just getting on my nerves. She's so judgy about other people, especially like her sister's stripping. Having to see characters in this book be super judgy about it is just annoying, and both her and the love interest are both judgy about it. And then there's the boyfriend, who I actually like the boyfriend. Like, the boyfriend is one of the few characters in this book that I like. And obviously, I know that's not gonna last. I know that he's going to cheat on her or emotionally abuse her or something, so that we can still like her as a character once she decides to sleep with his father. Like, I know that's coming, because of course it is. I just spent a lot of time thinking, like, why are you with him? Just break up with him. Like, you're making each other miserable. I don't understand this. You stop trying to change him into someone he's not, and just go be with someone else. And then there was like this one section where he's trying to warn her about how his dad is, and she's just like, well, he doesn't seem that way. And I'm like, you've known his dad for like 2 fucking seconds. Like, what are you talking about? I might pick up the audiobook on Audible just to make this a more enjoyable experience for everyone, because I feel like if I was listening to it, I might not be as miserable about it. We shall see. Good morning. I'm currently getting ready to go camping this weekend, and I'm hoping that I'll finally be able to finish this fucking novel. And yes, I am curling my hair to go camping because I am extra, and also because I have terrible social anxiety and this makes me feel better. So I'm 70% of the way through Birthday Girl. I'm still not loving it. I think that like all erotica books, or at least a lot of other erotic books I read, they always have like one specific kink, and I like that. I like when you find a kink that is for you or whatever, that you enjoy, and you find it in a book. It can make you love the book all the more. Unfortunately, the kink in this book is not for me. I mean, it's literally like the opposite of a kink. I don't know what the opposite of a kink is, but that's what this is for me. Because it is very clearly aimed towards like an act of service kink, and I don't mean sexual service. There's a scene basically where she starts masturbating to the idea of taking care of him, to the idea of making him dinner and cleaning up after him and like being a perfect wifey. And I'm just like, okay, nothing could turn me off more than the idea of cleaning up after a man. It's not something I find particularly hot, but I do understand the kink. It's just not for me. And I've read a lot about this kink in particular because there's somebody's blog who I follow, and they're very much into the acts of service thing. So I can appreciate the reasons behind it, like the idea of wanting to be like a good girl, but like it's just not something I find particularly appealing. Of course, the thing I thought was going to happen did happen. We find out that the boyfriend has been doing something shitty to the girlfriend, and so now she can sleep with his dad
guilt-free. But like that just makes me hate the dad more, because while she doesn't have to feel guilty for sleeping with the dad now because her boyfriend's an asshole, I still feel like you don't get to sleep with your son's girlfriend or ex-girlfriend and pretend to be a good dad. I will say there were two different like masturbations, or the one with the main character and the one with the love interest, and his masturbation scene kind of like was a callback to hers at the beginning of the novel, and I really like that. But other than that, like I just don't like it. I don't like these characters at all, but I only have 30% left, and I'm pretty stoked about that. So I finished Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas this weekend. Have I mentioned how much I hate the main character? Because holy shit, my hatred reached a whole new level in this last 20%. I know that in the last bit of a book, you always have to have that moment where the main couple breaks up and gets back together. With this book, it was clear that her character arc was going to be that she finally sticks up for herself. I'm all down for that. I have expressed many times throughout this book that I don't like the love interest. I think he's kind of a misogynistic pig. So there are plenty of ways the main characters could have stood up for herself and stood up to him and the way he thinks that I would have been on board with. There was actually a scene earlier in the book where she kind of stood up to like the way he thinks he owns her body, and that scene culminated in her doing a little striptease for him. Love that. Was totally on board with that. Unfortunately, the fight that broke them up was basically her giving him an ultimatum and telling him that he had to put her before his son. No, it was not exactly in those words, but I mean, that's what it came down to, and I was just so frustrated by that fact, because absolutely he should not do that. Like, who the fuck do you think you are? You have slept together twice. Why would you think that he should put you before his son? I was just so unbelievably annoyed at the main character for this, and of course, like, it's painted as her finally sticking up for herself because she's worth it and he should care about her more, but like, I was pretty much done with the book at that point, but I only had like 10% left, so I finished it. I hated it. I'm giving it 2 stars. I think this might be it for me and Penelope Douglas. I think, I just don't think we're right for each other, you know? I just think we want different things in life. Now, what have I learned through this experience of reading Age Gap? I actually kind of feel like I learned a lot. I always thought that Age Gap would be for me and would be something I would enjoy. I don't think I enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Now, I'm someone who has massive celebrity crushes on men who are 20 plus years older than me. Kyle Chandler is like my one true love. Gary Barlow, for some fucking reason, totally does it for me. So I thought for sure I would be into the age gap romances. And I'm just not. And I think it comes down to the fact that there has to be something else in the mix. If the guy is just simply older, I don't find that attractive. Like, I'm not just like slobbering over the idea of a dude being 50. I feel like a lot of people enjoy these types of romances simply for the forbidden aspect, and I guess for me, I don't really think it's that forbidden to date someone who's older. In real life, yes, sure, I think people get looked down on when they date someone who's significantly older than them. But in book form, in erotica form, I don't find age gap relationships that forbidden. Out of all these books, the one I would definitely recommend is Dreams of 18 by Saffron A. Kent. I really like her writing, and I feel like this has that extra forbidden aspect because she's the client of this doctor, as well as the age gap romance. And I think that Saffron A. Kent did a really good job of explaining why the main character in that book is so into this older man. This definitely isn't a subgenre that I'm writing off. I very much enjoy it if it's used in conjunction with something else, but I definitely won't be picking anything up simply because it's an age gap romance from this point on. I'm thinking for episode 3 of this series, either doing maybe mafia romances or paranormal romances. Tell me what you think down below. If you have any other suggestions for subgenres that I should do a video on, I would love to hear them. And I hope you like this video, and I hope you come back in soon. Bye.